Hey guys, remember Bates Motel, Season 5, Episode 8, The Body, and I was definitely really looking forward to this episode, especially after the way the last episode concluded. I definitely, now that we're at the home stretch, really anything's possible at this point. I was honestly kind of worried that maybe we were going to have some big character death, or that something really, really crazy was going to go down, for two reasons. Like I said, one, we're at the home stretch. Two, A&E did not provide descriptions for the last two episodes, and I thought there was a reason why they were keeping it so secret. And overall, this was still a really great episode. I still really did love this one overall, but compared to the last two episodes, it does not compare, definitely. It's not as good as the last two episodes. This still was a great episode. A lot definitely did go down here. It was a little bit more deliberately paced. Not slow, but deliberately paced than I thought it would be. But I was fine with that. We got some really big character revelations. A lot of this episode were the interrogations and basically the beginning of, the end of, now that, we know what's kind of going on. I think that definitely was very well handled here, but that Sheriff Green, of course, knows. As we know, last week, Norman confessed Green that he killed Sam Loomis, and we pick up basically right where that left off, where Sheriff Green is coaxing Norman to talk to her about the call he made to 9/11, confessing to murdering Sam Loomis, and he opens his eyes and sees his mother, and he quickly closes them and opens them again, and she's loved that victory that Norman feels throughout this episode, that finally, he's been able to get rid of her, finally, after all this time. He's been waiting and waiting, and now it seems like he's finally gotten rid of her, and he begs for his meds and for the sheriff to get him out of there, and he will tell her everything. And Green then escorts Norman out of the house, but his brother, Dylan, chases them down the stairs, telling Norman that not say anything until he sees his lawyer. And Dylan pleads with Norman to let him help him, but unfortunately he gets no response, and that's because Dylan can't really help him in this situation. So in the interrogation room, Norman points to two different spots on the map, and Sheriff Green then leans back and talks to him about the lake, and he admits to being down there at some point, and she reveals they pulled two bodies out of the lake. One was Jim Blackwell, and the other was a female who was too decomposed to identify. Of course, we know that was Norma. So unfortunately, no one will ever know that Norman killed Norma because she was too decomposed, but she asked him to tell her who she is, and Norman is shaken, but he says that he doesn't know if he killed her, and it's still possible. It definitely is possible that he killed her, and he tries hard to understand, but just can't quite get there, and she believes he's making it up. She doesn't think he's actually telling the truth, which this is very surprising. She thinks that he's just saying this, saying from where she's sitting, he looks and acts like a child, and children act out when they feel ignored, and she feels he's doing all this to get attention. This is one of the things I've loved about Sheriff Green, is that she has been on to him pretty much the entire time. She's known exactly what's going on. She's known exactly what he's been saying. She's been able to catch him in lies. She's been just a lot more subdued about this, and very different than Sheriff Romero. Sheriff Romero, he always tried to defend Norman. He always kind of saw the best in him. Oh, he's just a kid. Oh, he's just an innocent kid. He had teen angst, all that kind of stuff. But you know what? He's not an innocent kid now, so you can't really make that excuse anymore. And I like the way that Sheriff Green isn't playing around. She wants answers. She's doing whatever she can to get them, and that's something that really does work in her favor here. So Norman admits that he's lonely, but he isn't lying about this. He admits again that he killed Sam, but doesn't know why he did it. And he's brought up to his holding cell. An officer brings him some water and his medication, and we then get a horrifying shot where he finally sees Mother sitting beside him. She's suddenly there. She tosses him onto the ground, demanding to know what he did. He literally is, again, just like last week, fighting with Mother, saying he did this to protect Dylan. She drags him to the toilet, forced him to throw up the meds that he had just taken, and that is the perfect start to, like I said, what is definitely a more subdued but a very revealing episode. I thought this was a really great start overall. So she then cuddles him, saying that he thinks she's a monster, but there is no good in the world. But there is no one who is deserving of his kindness. And she isn't mad at him, but she can't let him do any more damage. He's already done so much, she can't possibly let him do anything more. And tells him that it's time for her to fix this, but she can't do that as long as he's there. And she asks for his forgiveness. And then he bangs his face off the toilet, knocking himself unconscious. And she says she will wake him up when things are safe again. So you can tell that Mother, that part of his personality wants to be in control. He wants to do whatever she can to try to make things as, as comfortable and as just, as pleasant for Norman as possible, and basically just doing what Norman's done, continue to lie and continue to deny everything, which is what Norman isn't trying to do. He wants to admit what's actually going on. He wants to do something about it, but Mother is really holding him back, and that's something I really did love here, is that this wasn't Norman purposely holding himself back. Like, sure, at the beginning of the season, when he wanted to create the illusion that Mother was actually alive, sure, that was all him. He knew very well that Norma was dead, but he wanted to make it prolong her living and make it seem like she was still alive because he didn't want to be alone without her. But now that everything's come out, he just feels like now it's just time for him to confess, and I don't blame him for doing that. This is definitely the time for him to do that. But then we get Dylan, and I actually really like where they went with Dylan here, because I didn't really know what was going to happen, but he meets with a lawyer named Julia Ramos, who is played by Yo-Yo in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which that was really cool to see. I love Yo-Yo as a character on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that she always adds just a lot of fun to that show, and she has some of the best action scenes we've had all season, so it was really cool to see her here. But she's at a diner and shares what's happening with Norman, and she wants to know all the details, and Dylan explains that his mother-in-law came to the motel and disappeared without a trace, but not sure if she just wanted to vanish or Norman actually did it. Remember, he's basically went there for two things. One, to get information about Norma, but also to get confirmation about what happened to Emma's mother, because she's completely left in the dark about that. So Dylan tells her that Norman isn't a bad person, nor a criminal, he just is crazy. And, I mean, yeah, that's the case. He's not a criminal. A lot of these things he hasn't done intentionally. It's been the mother personality that's gotten the best of him, or he didn't know what to do in that situation. He just is crazy, and he needs to admit. I think Norman very well knows that he's crazy. He knows he's not the same person, and Sheriff Green then comes to his cell. Norman's looking in the window, and his reflection shows him as Mother, and she suggests they return to the interrogation room to try again. And I love the way this was done, because this whole scene, it's very reminiscent of Psycho. We know at the end of Psycho, where they're interrogating Norman Bates, and it's actually the Mother personality that is speaking in his mind. We know that the Norma personality is actually who did it. This very much reminded me of that, where she thinks she's talking to Norman, she's actually talking to Mother. I thought this was brilliantly done. I love the way this was handled, and like I predicted, we are definitely going beyond the Psycho movie, which I'm very happy about. I like that they are going beyond it, because I want to see more. I want to see what happened after Psycho, and I like they're doing that for the most part. But she suggests they return to the interrogation room to try again. Norman asks her if it is standard procedure to question a mentally ill person without a lawyer present, and she seems caught off guard, saying that Norman never requested a lawyer. Why all of a sudden does he want a lawyer? I mean, this just seems completely out of left field. And in fact, he said he didn't want one. So Norman says he would rather just leave, and of course he said some crazy stuff, but this is what happens when he stops taking his meds, and he's sorry he has inconvenienced her, but he wants to go home. She tells him that he just confessed to murder, so they obviously need to talk about that. I mean, he doesn't get to go home. He claims to know his rights, and unless she's charging him with something, he's hanging out the door. She then places him under arrest, knowing very well that something shady's going on, and again, I love it he's not getting away with it. So Norman then gets hostile as she reads him his rights. He wants her to show him proof, and she says she doesn't have to. That's not how things work. She tells him to enjoy the accommodation, saying that they aren't as good as the motel, but they do, in fact, try to make it as comfortable for him as possible. So I love the way the Mother persona is getting the best of him. I love the way that Sheriff Green is believing. Again, just some really great interplay between those two. Some of the best I think we've had between them so far. Because now there really is nothing to hide. Sure, they've laid all the cards on the table. She knows everything that's going on, and it's making her character a lot more worthwhile than I ever thought she'd be. So we then see Chick, who I didn't really know was going to come of him. After Norman kicked him out, I didn't know what was going to happen here, but he actually drives up to the Bates Motel, seeing police tape everywhere, and he mutters, "No, Norman." He knows very well what Norman did, that Norman confessed to killing Jim Blackwell. He doesn't know about the whole Sam Loomis debacle that's going on. He thinks that Norman confessed to killing Jim Blackwell, and he worries about Norman. He parks as an officer tells the motel is closed for business, as it's an active crime scene, and Chick retrieves a bag from his trunk saying he has business with the motel owner, and she informs him that the house is a crime scene too, and he wants to know if Norman is dead. She finally tells him that Norman isn't dead and won't disclose any more information. So he says she already told him by asking his name. She wouldn't ask that if it wasn't a murder investigation. So he gets in his car, speeds off, and I like that he's not getting any answers here because, I mean, what are they going to tell him? They don't really know what's going on. They just know that this kid can, that this, this random man just confessed to murder, and obviously the house can be under quarantine because of it. Because, yeah, I mean, if you confess to murder, immediately all signs point to you, and you are now the main suspect and things like that. So, obviously, they're going to quarantine his house. So, basically, Julia Ramos then comes to meet Norman, saying that Dylan hired her, and Norman makes it clear that she works for him, not Dylan, and if her plan is to put him in a mental institution, she can walk right back out the door if she wants to do that. So she leans in saying that she works for him. She'll present it as a psychotic episode, but he gave them more information than just the murder, and he also gave them the dump site, and Julia goes on to tell him that if there is a body, he's going to have to explain why he lied about the murder, and Mother then takes over, asking Julia why someone would lie, and she says that someone else would have had to kill Sam Loomis, and obviously, again, she's trying to make it seem like this isn't what actually went down. So Dylan arrives at a hotel in town. He calls Emma, and I don't know if Emma's gonna be basically in, their apartment for the rest of the season. I'm hoping we get to see her come into the motel. I'm hoping that's where this is leading to. Right now, at least, she is the only character that's very unaware of what's going on, and I hope the show doesn't end that way. I want to see Emma get closure. I mean, Dylan knows pretty much everything at this point. The only thing he doesn't know is about Emma's mother. Romero obviously knows what's going on. Emma needs to be let in. I really want to see her be let in, but he says he misses her and their daughter and tells her everything that's happening with Norman, saying no more lies. He's worried that Norman is really sick and confused, and she admits that she's worried about him, but he insists that he's fine, and, it's understandable why she's worried, because he's in a very bad position where he is. She knows obviously that Norman's not well. She knows definitely that there's a lot of things with Norman that's very shady, and she doesn't want him involved with that, obviously. So Julia then taunts the sheriff, saying that she was playing a little fast and loose with the rules. Since the courthouse was open today and no papers were filed, she tells the sheriff that her client would like to be cooperative despite his rights being violated. So Norman apologized again, but says he has no idea where the body is, if there is a body, and he finally admits something that I thought was very interesting. He actually admits he fell in love with Madeliene. Yeah, this whole thing has not been a friendship, it's been a genuine love, and he was very lonely after his mother died, and Madeliene was very similar to his mother in looks and spirit. And he continues that Madeliene was lonely thanks to her cheating husband. He shares a story about Madeliene catching him with his mistress and those tire marks in the driveway from her leaving with Sam. Very angry, and he says that Madeliene came back later that night distraught and in shock, saying that Sam was dead. She talked about the woods and the well, that is all he knew, and he felt vulnerable for her, feeling maybe he could rescue her since he couldn't save his mother, and that is why he took the blame. Now, of course, that part isn't true. She doesn't actually know that Sam's dead. She just knows he's missing. But immediately, Madeleine's then called into the police station, and this scene, I mean, if you guys didn't think Isabel McNally wasn't a great actress, I mean, this scene is very telling of how great she is. I mean, really, that's what's paramount here, is her expression is very important here, and I said it, that was the one thing I was most one of the things I was most interested in, is what Madeleine's reaction to this was really going to be. So she's calling the police station. Sheriff Green says that they have reason to believe something happened to Sam, that Norman called saying he killed her husband. They have no evidence that he's dead, but he's missing. And obviously, she breaks down crying. I mean, she's freaking out about what happened. She had no idea something like this would happen. She continues the questioning, and Madeliene has no idea why Norman claimed to have killed Sam. Remember, she's only known Norman for like a couple weeks, so this isn't like something they've carried on for years and years. I mean, this is just something they've been doing for a couple of weeks, and I like that. I like that this has really all been just a couple of weeks. And she says she only knew Norman a few weeks from coming into her hardware store. And Green tells her that Norman is infatuated with her, asking if there is any basis for this infatuation. And again, she has no idea what's going on at this point. She's freaking out. I mean, obviously she'd be freaking out. She had no idea that Norman was in love with her. She thought it was simply just a friendship. And now, obviously, she's a lot more creeped out, and understandably. I mean, again, I thought her reaction was one of the best parts of this episode. I thought Isabel McNally has really been killing it with this character, and I love the way they are still making her such a major part of the story, because she is much more important now, I think, than she ever was. So Romero then hobbles into Mary's living room, still searching for his gun. She sleeps on her chair. He finds it behind the pillow she's resting on, tucks it behind his back, heads towards the door and leaves, and we know obviously where he's going. He's going to the motel to kill Norman, unaware that Norman's obviously not going to be there. So outside the police station, Green is given news. She orders them to put Norman back in the interrogation room, and she wants him to feel like he's being watched. So Madeliene attempts to call Sam, leaving him a voice message saying that he owes it to her to at least call her back, and she stops mid-sentence when she sees Norman being brought out of his cell. And this whole scene, again, very sad. She now knows kind of what's going on. So Green comes to see Dylan at his hotel room, confirming that they have found Emma's mother's body in the lake, and Green felt that Dylan would want to tell his wife himself. So yeah, it actually is Emma's mother's body, and she says she understands his loyalty to his brother, but he needs to consider cooperating with the police. And I thought it was going to be Norma, but no, it actually is Emma's mother, and that would make sense too. I mean, that's, again, another death they could pin on him. They tried to kill as best as they could. He just needs to consider cooperating with them. So Romero arrives, finally, after so many episodes, we finally get the scene we've been waiting for, where Romero arrives at Bates' motel, and he's watching the Bates home from the back. He climbs the snowy hill to the house, rips the police tape off the door, walks in, and obviously he means business. I mean, he is there to kill Norman. He hears a noise. He has memories of Norma climbing the stairs, smiling down at him. So this is a house that holds a lot of good memories, but also has a lot of bad memories. Remember, Romero was there with, Romero was living with Norma for a good 2 or 3 months. So this is definitely something that really does, a house that's very important to him, and it means a lot to him. He goes upstairs, he's grief-stricken, and he has memories of her in their bedroom. Norman then sits in the interrogation room, his mother telling him to be patient, and if things go well in the morning, she could go back to be with him. She says that she misses him. Romero then wakes up in his and Norma's bed, hearing noise in the basement. He grabs his gun and heads down, finding Chick typing while he's listening to Norman talking, and for me, this was the highlight of the episode, without a doubt. I mean, as bad as the scene turned out, this was definitely one of the probably the biggest scene of the episode, where Chick tells Romero he's there because him and Norman are friends. Chick says he will not call Norman crazy, and after Romero says that Norman killed his mother, Chick tells him that Norman actually loved her, and Chick informs Romero that Norman is in a jail after he confessed to murder. Chick says he's there because he's writing a book about Norman, and Romero says if he knows anything, he is an accessory to murder. And Chick then scoffs, saying it says the escaped convict, obviously, which he's not wrong about. I mean, Chick is really saying some things he probably shouldn't, but that's kind of the nature of Chick. He's very sardonic in that way. And Chick says he's typing in that room because he wanted to feel what she felt. He wanted to feel that anxiety. He wanted to feel that, just that uncertainty of, how Norma always felt. And Norman built it all for her. She was adored like a queen, and he wants to feel it. He's never really felt adored before, and that's really why he's in there. So Chick tells Romero that Norman dug his mother's body up. Romero wants to know where her body is, but Chick obviously has no idea. He didn't see it, and he laughs at how Romero and Norman are worthy adversaries, and how scripted drama doesn't hold a candle to true crime. Because remember, he's trying to write a true crime novel, and Chick begins to type some more, mocking Romero, and Romero then shoots him in the head and kills him instantly, which that was really shocking. I was not expecting that to go down, but yeah, Chick actually is dead, and I thought we were going to get to the end of the show, and Chick was going to write the book, and then it was going to end up being Psycho, and that's how this whole thing was going to go down, but that's not at all what's going to happen. Romero has in fact killed him. I was shocked that actually went down the way it did, but yeah, he's actually dead. The police then search the woods when an officer stumbles upon the well, finding Sam's body inside. Green arrives on scene and smiles, and Green returns to the interrogation room, informing Norman he's also being charged with the murders of Jim Blackwell and Audrey Ellis all the way back in season 3, and leaves the room before he could respond. And that is the way this episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where this is going to take us in the last 2 episodes of the show. So overall, guys, like I said, this was definitely a more subdued and slower episode than I expected to be, but still, a lot went down. I mean, first of all, we have to talk about Romero, because I know Romero obviously has a very deep vendetta against Norman. That's been basically his main goal since he went into prison. For 2 years, he's been in prison. He has been set on killing his stepson, and it's understandable why. He tried to get through to him in a rational way. It didn't work out. Norman just, mocked him and made it seem like he was actually, the reason that Norma actually died, and obviously he's now going to go to more, violent measures, and it makes sense why. die. But him killing Chick, I mean, that really does not solve a lot. And I can understand why they killed Chick. I mean, Chick was someone who was working with Norman. And I understand by doing that, Norman has a lot less allies. And it didn't really seem like Chick was on his side. I think Romero was hoping that he'd get Chick on his side and maybe get him to rally against Norman and then find a way to, make sure that Norman is dead. I think that's kind of what he wants to do. But now he's killed Chick, and I don't really know what's going to happen now that Chick's dead. I was very surprised that they actually did kill Chick, because Chick was actually a big part of this final season, believe it or not. I really like the actor. I think Ryan Hurst has been great. I think up till now he hasn't really been used as well as he has in this season, but they really have used him to their advantage. I mean, he's been very funny. He's been very witty. Like I said, he's had that very big sarcastic nature. He's been very quirky at times. There's been a lot of Twin Peaks-esque with his character, and I really love where they've gone with him this season. I'm going to miss him, honestly, because he definitely was some of the most fun parts of the season. The season has definitely been fun. They've really incorporated some nice lighthearted humor throughout it, and a lot of that has been because of Chick. Also because of Mother, but Chick especially has really been great, and I'm definitely going to miss that character. But now I don't know where Romero's going to go, because Romero does know that Norman's in prison, so I don't know if he's going to try to start some case against him or what's really going to happen there. But I'm very interested in seeing how that really does go down. I don't think we're going to get the actual confrontation between those two till the end of next week's episode. I think that's when it's going to go down. That typically Bates Motel's like other shows where a lot happens in the penultimate episode, and then the last episode is kind of like the wrap-up. The only time I can't really think of something like that happening was Season 1. Season 1 was where we got the Mrs. Watts kill. I mean, that's what happened there. Season 2 was very much that. Season 3 was also that, was definitely that as well, except for Bradley being killed. That definitely was pretty big. And then Season 4, of course, that was definitely how they played it. So I don't know if that's how it's going to go for the final season, if they have something different planned, or if they're going to have that confrontation in the last episode. But I think because he is at the motel, I think it only makes sense for them to have that confrontation next week. I think that definitely is what's going to go down, and I can't wait to see how that's going to be. It's probably been one of the most anticipated things since the beginning of, the end of last season. I've been waiting for those two to finally go head-to-head and just brawl and finally just, have that confrontation and get that over with, because that's the thing that has been plaguing Romero ever since Norma's death, and he really wants to feel that satisfaction. I think he's really going to feel that, by finally killing Norman. Is it the right thing to do? Not really, but I'm interested in seeing really where we're going to go with this, because I think they definitely this is definitely going to go in some really, really dark place, and I can't wait to see where that's going to go, because definitely, like I said, that's been one of my most anticipated things for this season. I think definitely it's going to be very well done. But now, of course, Sheriff Green knows that Norman is in fact responsible, not only for that, but also for Audrey's death and Jim Blackwell. So, yeah, Norman's kind of toast at this point. I don't know if Norman's really going to get out of this. You got Dylan, who wants to send him to a mental institution. You got Julia, who's trying to defend him as best as she can. But then you also have, Emma, who her mother died, as we know. Norman killed her mother. And, yeah, Emma is very in on the outs about this, and Dylan also is as well. He doesn't know that Norman killed Emma's mother. He has no idea about that, but that definitely is going to come back at some point. I don't feel like that's something that's just going to go away. You can't spend all this time, you can't just have that be introduced in season 4 and have that go away, and they spend all this time on Emma's mother that they're going to find out. I mean, that's going to happen definitely, and I think it's going to be very heartbreaking when it does, because we know the kind of relationship that Emma and Norman used to have. Obviously, they don't have that anymore because of what's happened to Norman over the years and how freaked out, and how better off Emma really is without him. But I think Emma is definitely going to survive, and I think she's going to survive with one Dylan dead. I don't think Dylan's going to live. I think Dylan is probably going to end up dead, and I don't think it's going to be, on purpose. I think it's going to be something where Mother just decides she needs to kill him, and I think that's kind of how it's going to go. Or Emma's going to, or they're both going to live, and they're just going to live with the knowledge that Norman has killed all these people. I think that's definitely how this is going to go, and I think it's sad that we're ending that way, but it makes a lot of sense, definitely. I mean, Dylan and Emma are two people who have always tried to see the best in Norman, have always tried to provide for him as best as they can, and there's only so much they can do. I mean, really, especially with Dylan, there's only so much you can do. You can try to get him into the hospital, you can try to get him a lawyer, you can go to all of these, things that are completely voluntary. Like, nobody asked Dylan to get him a lawyer. Nobody asked Dylan to try to get him into a mental institution. Nobody asked him to do this stuff, but he's doing that because he cares about his brother. He knows his brother's crazy, and that he's not a bad person, but he just needs help. help, and he really wants to finally get him that help and for him to sustain in that mental institution, because that's been the problem with last season, that he was starting a mental institution, then he got out very quickly. So obviously Dylan wants to try to make sure that he stays there. So I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with that whole story. But also Madeliene. I mean, Madeleine's scene was one of the most heartbreaking, I think, of this entire season. Her realizing that not only is her husband dead, but the person that she's probably relied on as one of her only real true friends in the show is actually the killer. And you can just see how much that has changed in her. You know, now she has a much different opinion of Norman. I think that's really going to change their overall relationship. So that was definitely very sad to see. Overall, guys, I really do love this episode overall. I thought there was a lot of really great stuff going on here. The way the mother is trying to, again, defend Norman and trying to make it seem like he's innocent. You know, he just doesn't want to do that anymore. He wants to confess. He wants to let people know what he did, and he just wants to hold himself accountable for everything. And I think it's smart of him to do that. I think definitely it's putting him in a very shady position, but, you know, there's only so far you can go, and I think Norman's he's reached his breaking point. Like, he's done with killing. He doesn't want to kill anymore, and we've known this since the first episode. He didn't want to have to kill Sam Loomis, but Mother is kind of what provoked him, and he doesn't really want to listen to her, but Mother is really the thing that's keeping him from really, one, telling the truth, but also really trying to finally confess to what he did, which you can tell he wants to, but Mother's kind of not letting him do that. So I'm interested in seeing really where the rest of the season's going to go. Overall, guys, I really did love this episode overall, and I'm definitely going to give Bates Motel Season 5, Episode 8, The Body, a 4 out of 5 or a B+. So overall, guys, maybe this episode, Bates Motel. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts in it. I really did love this episode overall. Guys, again, we're at the home stretch. I can't believe we have 2 episodes left, but I have no idea what's going to happen, and I can't wait to see what happens within those 2 episodes. But that's my review. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next, which will be for the season premiere of Better Call Saul, which I am so hyped for. I've been waiting so long for that to finally come on, and now it's finally coming on, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.